We interrupt this program. This is a national emergency. Important instructions will follow. The National Emergency Alert System has issued an urgent notification for the continental United States. This station has interrupted its regular programming at the request of the United States government to participate in the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. The following message is delivered by order of the United States government. This is an attack warning. Repeat. This is an attack warning. An attack on the country has been detected. 6 nuclear missiles have been launched and are confirmed to be headed toward the continental United States. These missiles are expected to be armed with nuclear warheads. All civilians are urged to remain calm and seek immediate underground shelter. Prepare to sustain yourself with non-perishable food and drinkable water for at least 14 days. When the danger has passed, an all-clear siren, similar to an air raid alarm, will sound. Do not leave shelter or attempt evacuation until you hear this signal. Radiation levels outside will be lethal. Exposure without protection is fatal. This broadcast will provide verified updates as the situation evolves. The U.S. National Missile Defense System is currently deploying countermeasures to intercept the incoming threats. The Russian Federation has launched a nuclear strike on NATO countries, triggering NATO's Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all. The United States, in coordination with NATO allies, has authorized a retaliatory strike targeting critical Russian military sites to prevent further aggression. This is a national emergency. American lives are at grave risk. Seek underground shelter immediately. We interrupt this program. This is a national emergency. Important instructions will follow. Incoming missile impact is expected in approximately 60 minutes. Residents within 120 miles of military bases, major industrial centers, power plants, dams, and water reservoirs in California, Nebraska, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, Florida, Illinois, and the District of Columbia must evacuate immediately and move to designated safe zones or underground shelters outside the danger radius. Do not delay evacuation. If you cannot evacuate safely, move to basements or underground rooms in sturdy buildings. Stay away from windows, doors, and exterior walls. Carry a battery-powered radio and keep it with you at all times. Follow all updates and instructions closely. Leaving shelter now without protection will expose you to lethal radioactive fallout, a consequence of nuclear detonations. Prolonged exposure can cause severe illness or death. A major power outage is currently affecting the Western power grid. This blackout includes California, Oregon, Nevada, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Montana. Cyber attacks are suspected to be the cause. Residents in affected areas are asked to stay indoors and use battery-powered flashlights. Avoid candles to prevent fire hazards. Keep refrigerator and freezer doors closed to preserve food. Federal and state authorities are working to restore power as quickly as possible. This is not a test. The North American Aerospace Defense Command has detected the launch of 5 missiles. These missiles are believed to be armed with nuclear warheads and are expected to impact Seattle, Denver, Miami, Houston, and Toronto within the next 30 to 45 minutes. This is an attack warning. I repeat, this is an attack warning. An actual attack on the United States and Canada has been detected, and immediate protective measures must be taken. All residents of Seattle, Denver, Miami, Houston, and Toronto should seek fallout shelters immediately. If no shelter is available, seek refuge in a basement or interior room on the lowest level of a sturdy building. Take a battery-powered radio to stay informed during your time in shelter. Do not leave your shelter until it is officially declared safe. Leaving shelter prematurely risks exposure to radioactive fallout, a dangerous byproduct of nuclear explosions. Prolonged exposure to fallout can cause severe illness or death. If someone dies as a result of fallout exposure, remove the body from the inner shelter and place it on the far side of the room, if possible, covering it with a blanket or fabric. After 2 weeks, it will be safe to take the body outside for proper disposal. Once it is safe to go outside, radios will broadcast the all clear. Do not venture outdoors until you hear this notification. Fallout clings to clothing and skin, and going outside prematurely puts you and your family at serious risk. This station has interrupted normal programming to activate the emergency alert system. This is not a test. I repeat, this is not a test. A major power outage has been reported affecting Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. The outage impacts the entire central power grid. Cyber attacks are suspected as the cause. While federal authorities investigate, residents in affected areas are urged to stay indoors. Use battery-operated flashlights instead of candles, which present a fire hazard. Keep refrigerator and freezer doors closed as much as possible to preserve food. Federal and state agencies are working with energy providers to resolve the issue and restore power as soon as possible. We interrupt this program. This is a national emergency. Important instructions will follow. Incoming missile impact is expected in approximately 60 minutes. Residents within 120 miles of military bases, major industrial centers, power plants, dams, and water reservoirs in California, Nebraska, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, Florida, Illinois, and the District of Columbia must evacuate immediately and move to designated safe zones or underground shelters outside the danger radius. Do not delay evacuation. If you cannot evacuate safely, move to basements or underground rooms in sturdy buildings. Stay away from windows, doors, and exterior walls. Carry a battery-powered radio and keep it with you at all times. Follow all updates and instructions closely. Leaving shelter now without protection will expose you to lethal radioactive fallout, a consequence of nuclear detonations. Prolonged exposure can cause severe illness or death. A major power outage is currently affecting the Western power grid. This blackout includes California, Oregon, Nevada, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Montana. Cyber attacks are suspected to be the cause. Residents in affected areas are asked to stay indoors and use battery-powered flashlights. Avoid candles to prevent fire hazards. Keep refrigerator and freezer doors closed to preserve food. Federal and state authorities are working to restore power as quickly as possible. This is not a test. The North American Aerospace Defense Command has detected the launch of 5 missiles. These missiles are believed to be armed with nuclear warheads and are expected to impact Seattle, Denver, Miami, Houston, and Toronto within the next 30 to 45 minutes. This is an attack warning. I repeat, this is an attack warning. An actual attack on the United States and Canada has been detected, and immediate protective measures must be taken. All residents of Seattle, Denver, Miami, Houston, and Toronto should seek fallout shelters immediately. If no shelter is available, seek refuge in a basement or interior room on the lowest level of a sturdy building. Take a battery-powered radio to stay informed during your time in shelter. Do not leave your shelter until it is officially declared safe. Leaving shelter prematurely risks exposure to radioactive fallout, a dangerous byproduct of nuclear explosions. Prolonged exposure to fallout can cause severe illness or death. If someone dies as a result of fallout exposure, remove the body from the inner shelter and place it on the far side of the room, if possible, covering it with a blanket or fabric. After 2 weeks, it will be safe to take the body outside for proper disposal. Once it is safe to go outside, radios will broadcast the all clear. Do not venture outdoors until you hear this notification. Fallout clings to clothing and skin, and going outside prematurely puts you and your family at serious risk. This station has interrupted normal programming to activate the emergency alert system. This is not a test. I repeat, this is not a test. A major power outage has been reported affecting Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. The outage impacts the entire central power grid. Cyber attacks are suspected as the cause. While federal authorities investigate, residents in affected areas are urged to stay indoors. Use battery-operated flashlights instead of candles, which present a fire hazard. Keep refrigerator and freezer doors closed as much as possible to preserve food. Federal and state agencies are working with energy providers to resolve the issue and restore power as soon as possible. We interrupt this program. This is a national emergency. Important instructions will follow. Incoming missile impact is expected in approximately 60 minutes. Residents within 120 miles of military bases, major industrial centers, power plants, dams, and water reservoirs in California, Nebraska, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, Florida, Illinois, and the District of Columbia must evacuate immediately and move to designated safe zones or underground shelters outside the danger radius. Do not delay evacuation. If you cannot evacuate safely, move to basements or underground rooms in sturdy buildings. Stay away from windows, doors, and exterior walls. Carry a battery-powered radio and keep it with you at all times. Follow all updates and instructions closely. Leaving shelter now without protection will expose you to lethal radioactive fallout, a consequence of nuclear detonations. Prolonged exposure can cause severe illness or death. A major power outage is currently affecting the Western power grid. This blackout includes California, Oregon, Nevada, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Montana. Cyber attacks are suspected to be the cause. Residents in affected areas are asked to stay indoors and use battery-powered flashlights. Avoid candles to prevent fire hazards. Keep refrigerator and freezer doors closed to preserve food. Federal and state authorities are working to restore power as quickly as possible. This is not a test. The North American Aerospace Defense Command has detected the launch of 5 missiles. These missiles are believed to be armed with nuclear warheads and are expected to impact Seattle, Denver, Miami, Houston, and Toronto within the next 30 to 45 minutes. This is an attack warning. I repeat, this is an attack warning. An actual attack on the United States and Canada has been detected, and immediate protective measures must be taken. All residents of Seattle, Denver, Miami, Houston, and Toronto should seek fallout shelters immediately. If no shelter is available, seek refuge in a basement or interior room on the lowest level of a sturdy building. Take a battery-powered radio to stay informed during your time in shelter. Do not leave your shelter until it is officially declared safe. Leaving shelter prematurely risks exposure to radioactive fallout, a dangerous byproduct of nuclear explosions. Prolonged exposure to fallout can cause severe illness or death. If someone dies as a result of fallout exposure, remove the body from the inner shelter and place it on the far side of the room, if possible, covering it with a blanket or fabric. After 2 weeks, it will be safe to take the body outside for proper disposal. Once it is safe to go outside, radios will broadcast the all clear. Do not venture outdoors until you hear this notification. Fallout clings to clothing and skin, and going outside prematurely puts you and your family at serious risk. This station has interrupted normal programming to activate the emergency alert system. This is not a test. I repeat, this is not a test. A major power outage has been reported affecting Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. The outage impacts the entire central power grid. Cyber attacks are suspected as the cause. While federal authorities investigate, residents in affected areas are urged to stay indoors. Use battery-operated flashlights instead of candles, which present a fire hazard. Keep refrigerator and freezer doors closed as much as possible to preserve food. Federal and state agencies are working with energy providers to resolve the issue and restore power as soon as possible. We interrupt this program. This is a national emergency. Important instructions will follow. Incoming missile impact is expected in approximately 60 minutes. Residents within 120 miles of military bases, major industrial centers, power plants, dams, and water reservoirs in California, Nebraska, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, Florida, Illinois, and the District of Columbia must evacuate immediately and move to designated safe zones or underground shelters outside the danger radius. Do not delay evacuation. If you cannot evacuate safely, move to basements or underground rooms in sturdy buildings. Stay away from windows, doors, and exterior walls. Carry a battery-powered radio and keep it with you at all times. Follow all updates and instructions closely. Leaving shelter now without protection will expose you to lethal radioactive fallout, a consequence of nuclear detonations. Prolonged exposure can cause severe illness or death. A major power outage is currently affecting the Western power grid. This blackout includes California, Oregon, Nevada, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Montana. Cyber attacks are suspected to be the cause. Residents in affected areas are asked to stay indoors and use battery-powered flashlights. Avoid candles to prevent fire hazards. Keep refrigerator and freezer doors closed to preserve food. Federal and state authorities are working to restore power as quickly as possible. This is not a test. The North American Aerospace Defense Command has detected the launch of 5 missiles. These missiles are believed to be armed with nuclear warheads and are expected to impact Seattle, Denver, Miami, Houston, and Toronto within the next 30 to 45 minutes. This is an attack warning. I repeat, this is an attack warning. An actual attack on the United States and Canada has been detected, and immediate protective measures must be taken. All residents of Seattle, Denver, Miami, Houston, and Toronto should seek fallout shelters immediately. If no shelter is available, seek refuge in a basement or interior room on the lowest level of a sturdy building. Take a battery-powered radio to stay informed during your time in shelter. Do not leave your shelter until it is officially declared safe. Leaving shelter prematurely risks exposure to radioactive fallout, a dangerous byproduct of nuclear explosions. Prolonged exposure to fallout can cause severe illness or death. If someone dies as a result of fallout exposure, remove the body from the inner shelter and place it on the far side of the room, if possible, covering it with a blanket or fabric. After 2 weeks, it will be safe to take the body outside for proper disposal. Once it is safe to go outside, radios will broadcast the all clear. Do not venture outdoors until you hear this notification. Fallout clings to clothing and skin, and going outside prematurely puts you and your family at serious risk. This station has interrupted normal programming to activate the emergency alert system. This is not a test. I repeat, this is not a test. A major power outage has been reported affecting Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. The outage impacts the entire central power grid. Cyber attacks are suspected as the cause. While federal authorities investigate, residents in affected areas are urged to stay indoors. Use battery-operated flashlights instead of candles, which present a fire hazard. Keep refrigerator and freezer doors closed as much as possible to preserve food. Federal and state agencies are working with energy providers to resolve the issue and restore power as soon as possible. We understand the gravity of this situation and the fear it may cause. It is crucial to remain calm and focused during these moments. Your safety and the safety of those around you depend on following official instructions precisely. Emergency response teams and government agencies are fully mobilized and working tirelessly to manage the situation, coordinate rescue efforts, and restore order. Please continue to stay indoors or in your designated shelter until the all-clear signal is given. Avoid unnecessary exposure to the outside environment, as radioactive fallout and other hazards may still be present. Keep your battery-powered radios on and tuned to official channels for verified updates. Do not rely on unconfirmed information from social media or unofficial sources. Prepare to assist vulnerable family members and neighbors if possible, but always prioritize your own safety first. In these challenging times, community cooperation and calm resilience are our greatest strengths. Remember, this broadcast will remain active with continuous updates until the emergency is fully resolved. Thank you for your attention, your cooperation, and your courage. Together we will overcome this crisis. interrupt this program. This is a national emergency. A nuclear strike has occurred. Multiple detonations have been confirmed across the continental United States. The full extent of the damage is still being assessed. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The blasts have caused widespread infrastructure failure. Electrical grids are down. Communication lines are disrupted. Major transportation routes are impassable. Emergency services are operating under extreme duress. Fallout is expected to spread rapidly across affected regions. Do not leave your shelter under any circumstances. Remain indoors, seal all windows and doors, and avoid contact with dust or debris. Radiation levels remain dangerously high. Those exposed to fallout may experience symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, confusion, and skin burns within hours. Seek immediate medical attention only if it is safe to do so. This is an unprecedented crisis. Government continuity centers have been activated. Civilian authorities are now operating from protected locations. Martial law has been declared nationwide. Curfews are in effect. Reports of cyber disruptions continue to emerge. Power failures, water system interference, and food supply chain interruptions are now widespread. Looting has been reported in several cities. Citizens are urged to remain calm and refrain from unlawful activity. Violators will be dealt with severely under emergency wartime protocols. Military units have been deployed to enforce stability and assist with relief efforts. Armed forces are securing key locations and coordinating with local agencies to identify safe zones and evacuation corridors once conditions permit. You're listening to Frequency 404. This is a special report. The following is a verified timeline of events that led to the current national emergency. This information is provided to help the public understand the broader context of the unfolding crisis. Approximately 72 hours before impact, intelligence satellites detected unusual military activity across several Eurasian territories. Large-scale troop mobilizations near NATO borders, increased submarine activity in the Arctic, and encrypted communications surging across military networks signaled an elevated threat level. At 0517 UTC, 3 days before the attack, a NATO early warning radar installation in Eastern Europe was taken offline by a suspected cyber assault. The incident was classified and kept from public knowledge to avoid panic. Within hours, similar attacks began targeting critical infrastructure across allied nations: power stations, communication grids, water purification systems. The source of the intrusions was traced to a sophisticated network believed to be operated by the Russian Federation's Military Intelligence Unit, GRU. Though officially denied, the digital fingerprints were unmistakable. Diplomatic channels were activated. Emergency meetings at the United Nations and NATO headquarters resulted in heightened alert status across all member states. Forces were placed on DEFCON 3. Strategic bombers were moved into patrol patterns. Submarines vanished from sonar. At 14:06 UTC, 48 hours before impact, reports surfaced of a nuclear submarine missing from its assigned patrol in the Barents Sea. Simultaneously, long-range radar in Alaska and Greenland picked up movement suggestive of intercontinental ballistic missile deployment. Despite warnings and multiple back-channel attempts to de-escalate, no official statement came from Moscow. The world held its breath. Then, at 8:43 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the first of 6 missiles was launched. Within minutes, global surveillance confirmed full trajectory locks on U.S. territory. NORAD issued the alert. NATO's Article 5 was triggered immediately. An attack on one is an attack on all. Allied submarines and bombers were ordered into retaliation patterns. The nuclear protocol was activated for the first time since the Cold War. It took just under an hour. The missiles struck, and the world changed forever. We now bring you a summary of confirmed impact damage and environmental consequences resulting from the initial wave of nuclear detonations. This report has been compiled from verified military and civilian channels. At approximately 9:41 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the first missile detonated. Within minutes, multiple warheads impacted strategic targets across the continent. Blast zones were obliterated, concrete vaporized, steel twisted and melted like wax. Everything within a several-mile radius of each detonation was incinerated instantly. The heat pulse reached temperatures exceeding the surface of the sun. Those caught in the open didn't have time to react. Shadows are all that remain, etched into walls, sidewalks, and streets like silent screams frozen in ash. Buildings were flattened. Skyscrapers fell sideways in slow motion, creating avalanches of glass and steel. Entire neighborhoods disappeared into firestorms. Then came the shock waves. Supersonic walls of air that shredded infrastructure, hurled vehicles like toys, and collapsed bridges, tunnels, and overpasses. Even those far outside the blast radius experienced shattered windows, ruptured eardrums, and structural collapse. Within seconds, the electromagnetic pulse, EMP, wiped out electrical systems across vast regions. Power grids failed, backup generators overloaded, satellites went dark. Civilian and military communications were severed. Hospitals lost life support systems. Air traffic controls went blind. Water systems failed. Panic surged. Those fortunate enough to be in deep shelters or remote areas survived the initial blasts. But even they felt the earth tremble. The sky turned a sickening shade of orange-gray. A dense radioactive cloud began to spread across the continent, carried by jet streams, feeding on wind currents, falling as toxic ash. Casualty estimates are not yet finalized, but early projections are grim. Tens of millions lost within the first hour. Entire cities gone. We do not share these details to instill fear, but to convey the scale of what has occurred. This is a moment unlike any other in human history, and we are only in the beginning. Keep your radios on, remain in shelter. The next 72 hours will determine everything. If you are hearing this broadcast, you have likely survived the initial wave. But the threat is far from over. The air above our cities is no longer safe. Nuclear detonations release a deadly byproduct, ionizing radiation. It lingers. It moves with the wind. It seeps into everything: water, soil, skin, lungs, the invisible killer. Those who were near ground zero are already gone. But outside the immediate blast zones, exposure is a slower, crueler fate. Radiation sickness begins subtly. Headache, nausea, dizziness. Within hours, vomiting and fever. Within days, hair loss, open sores, internal bleeding. The body turns against itself, cell by cell. Without treatment, and there is no treatment now, death is inevitable. Stay underground. Fallout particles can drift for hundreds of miles. They fall as ash, dust, or rain. Do not go outside, even if the sky looks calm. Do not touch soil, grass, or exposed surfaces. Do not drink unfiltered water. Decontamination is possible only in controlled environments, and we no longer have those. Seal all ventilation. Use damp cloths to block gaps in windows and doors. Do not let outside air in unless absolutely necessary. If you must leave shelter to aid someone, wear the thickest layers possible. Plastic overclothing, a mask over your face, and above all, return quickly. Every second matters. Radiation does not discriminate. It kills the strong and the weak, the prepared and the unprepared. But the informed have a chance. You are not helpless. Protect your lungs. Conserve clean water. Stay calm. The body can endure incredible hardship, but only if the mind stays focused. We know you're scared, so are we. But this signal, and your will to survive, means that not all is lost. Stay with us. More instructions will follow. Bombs have stopped falling, but the world they left behind is unrecognizable. In the absence of order, chaos rises. In major cities, law enforcement is gone. Communications are severed. Food distribution systems have collapsed. The digital infrastructure wiped. And hunger is louder than fear. People once bound by civility now turn to desperation. Supermarkets have been stripped bare, pharmacies raided, fuel stations set ablaze. Armed groups have taken control of vital supply routes. Some do it to survive, others for power. Reports confirm multiple incidents of violence across remaining population centers. Neighbors turning against neighbors, gangs forming. The rule of law replaced by the rule of force. But not everywhere. In isolated shelters, stories emerge of strangers sharing rations, of doctors treating the wounded by candlelight, of families opening their homes to others despite the risk. It is in the smallest moments, a flashlight passed to a crying child, a blanket shared with a stranger, that humanity resists the dark. You will see things you never thought possible. You will be tested. But remember, civilization is not just cities or governments. It is you, your choices, your decency. Do not let the world outside redefine who you are inside. This is the new reality, but it does not have to be permanent. Hold on. Help may be coming. Stay with us. government has not fallen, not entirely. From a network of undisclosed bunkers and hardened military installations, remnants of the federal command structure have re-emerged, scattered but alive. A coordinated response is now underway. Acting President Ellen Carter, sworn in from a continuity of government facility buried beneath the Rockies, addressed the nation, what's left of it, through shortwave emergency channels. To every American listening, we are still here, and we are fighting to bring you back the light. Under Operation Homeland Beacon, elite National Guard units, FEMA response teams, and military engineers have been deployed to assess damage, restore communications, and secure refugee zones. Temporary safe zones are being established in former military bases, decommissioned missile silos, and deep underground subway networks. These areas are being converted into triage centers, food distribution hubs, and protected shelters. Satellite drones now scan for survivors in the rubble of collapsed cities. Mobile command convoys, heavily armored and self-sustaining, are traveling across the Midwest and South, relaying critical intel and attempting to reconnect isolated communities. But the challenge is overwhelming. Over 60% of infrastructure is non-functional. Rail systems are twisted wreckage, highways impassable. The electrical grid fragmented. Entire cities remain cut off. Civilian leadership has been restructured under martial emergency protocols. Curfews have been declared. Unauthorized movement in red zones may result in detainment. Civil defense broadcasts repeat a chilling mantra: order is survival, cooperation is life, resistance is death. Some citizens welcome the return of structure. Others fear a new kind of regime rising from the ashes, one built not on freedom, but on control. And still, for many, any order is better than the abyss. This is not salvation, not yet, but it's a signal, a reminder. You are not alone in the dark. There is still a line between collapse and control, and someone is still trying to hold it. The world has crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. What began as warning, as retaliation, has now spiraled into global retribution. In response to the nuclear strike on American and Canadian soil, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization invoked Article 5 in full force. An attack on one is an attack on all. Within hours, coordinated retaliatory strikes were launched. British submarines, long silent beneath the Atlantic, surfaced only to disappear again, this time with payloads activated. French and German strategic forces initiated precision bombing campaigns across Eastern Europe, targeting military command bunkers, missile silos, radar arrays, and strategic fuel reserves. American bombers, the B-2s and B-21s, took to the sky from undisclosed bases in the Pacific and Midwest. Their destination: Russian strategic assets, air defense clusters, and mobile nuclear launchers. The goal was not destruction for its own sake, but neutralization. At least that was the intention. But the line between retaliation and escalation has blurred into chaos. Russian forces responded with secondary launches, some intercepted, others not. Satellite communication between command nodes is increasingly unreliable. Some NATO nations have lost contact with field units. Conflicting reports flood the emergency intelligence network. China has issued a formal condemnation of the initial attack and has called for immediate de-escalation. But their silence since then is unsettling. India, Pakistan, and Israel have all elevated their nuclear readiness to DEFCON equivalent levels. Sweden, Finland, and Switzerland, once neutral, are now fully integrated into allied emergency defense networks. All international airspace has been closed. Global trade routes are frozen. The United Nations has fallen silent. And the world? The world is holding its breath. What we are witnessing is not simply a war between nations, but the unraveling of a delicate post-war world order. The United States has vowed not to stop until the architects of the attack are dismantled, politically, militarily, and economically. The Kremlin has gone dark, but their submarines haven't. And somewhere out there, in the vast, cold silence of the Arctic waters, are weapons with no names, awaiting no permission. For now, NATO stands united, but unity forged in fire is brittle. What you're about to hear has not been confirmed by any government source, and perhaps it never will be. But the whispers are growing louder. They speak of a last resort, a black project, buried in the deepest layers of American defense infrastructure. A plan so catastrophic in scope that even the most hardened generals feared its activation. Its codename, Project Umbra. We know little, only fragments. Insiders describe it not as a single weapon, but as a sequence, a full-spectrum protocol designed not just to retaliate, but to erase. The alleged goal, the neutralization of the Russian Federation as a functioning state, politically, economically, militarily, and digitally. Not a mass bombing, something colder, something precise. They say the first phase would target all remaining Russian command structures, using hypersonic drones and low-orbit kinetic projectiles to decapitate leadership, even in deep bunkers. Phase 2 involves neural warfare, silent viral payloads meant to fry infrastructure, power grids, satellites, water systems, nuclear launch codes, rendering them useless. Phase 3 is the most controversial, a coordinated information wipe, a blackout of history, culture, and memory. Servers destroyed, archives burned, civil records gone. In theory, a nation unplugged from its own identity. And after that, nothing. A silence more total than destruction. Some suggest the plan also includes selective EMP detonation over rural regions to collapse remaining resistance, followed by autonomous surveillance units deployed indefinitely. Others claim Project Umbra is already in motion, and that the erratic power failures seen across parts of Siberia and the Urals are not cyber attacks, but rehearsals. The Pentagon denies the existence of any such plan. But then again, they would. Sources from within European intelligence circles express unease, suggesting that the West may be prepared to go further than anyone imagined to ensure that no threat like this ever rises again. Some are calling it strategic deletion. Others, genocide without bullets. We do not know what is real, but the fear is. And in times like these, fear is as dangerous as truth. Stay alert, stay hidden, stay human. Though the cities burn and the skies remain heavy with ash, the worst may not yet be behind us. Military analysts across multiple Allied commands now suggest that what we've witnessed could have been only the opening act in a far more devastating sequence. Several Russian nuclear submarines have gone dark, their locations unknown. It's feared they may be positioned off the US coasts, waiting in silence for a signal. Meanwhile, European radar stations have detected anomalies near the Arctic and Baltic regions, suggesting mobile launch platforms may be repositioning to target the heart of Western Europe. The possibility of further missile strikes, both in North America and across Europe, is no longer a theory. It is a scenario actively being prepared for. Authorities urge civilians not to relax their guard. Even in areas that appear untouched, the threat remains active. Fallout patterns are unpredictable, carried by shifting winds and precipitation. The rain outside may carry death in its droplets. Do not trust clear skies. Do not confuse silence with safety. In shelters, survivors are being advised to fortify what little they have. Tighten the seams, seal windows with anything airtight, and minimize outside exposure. Many have already begun rationing more strictly. There is no certainty as to when aid can reach them again. Reports of military convoys moving across the Midwest are growing, but roadways are damaged, and the fuel supply is unstable. Even the National Guard is stretched to its limit. Communications are deteriorating. The internet is fragmenting. Cellular networks are patchy at best, and large portions of the grid remain dark. In some regions, only analog signals persist. Shortwave frequencies like this one may be your last reliable link to the outside world. Hold on to your radios. Do not expect clarity from social media or messaging apps. Misinformation is rampant. Rumors kill. Throughout the night, unconfirmed alerts have been coming in from Berlin, Warsaw, and Paris. Panic on the streets. Some speak of new flashes in the distance. Others swear they saw nothing. NATO forces have declared a state of maximum alert. Martial law is being implemented in key sectors. Curfews are in effect. Movement is restricted. No one is truly safe. And still, we wait. The hours ahead may bring another shockwave, another flash, another moment of irreversible loss. There is no timetable. There is only preparation and patience and endurance. Stay underground. Stay calm. Keep the radios close. Keep your will intact. We are living in the shadow of a tragedy beyond imagining. 6 nuclear detonations have shattered the heart of a nation once vibrant and strong. Cities that thrived now lie in ruins, silent reminders of a world forever altered. The loss is staggering. Over 15 million lives have been lost across the United States alone. Mothers, fathers, children, friends, strangers, all caught in the merciless grip of war. Entire communities vanished in moments, hospitals overwhelmed, infrastructure shattered, and hope stretched thin. The economic toll is incalculable, with trillions in damages and key industries brought to their knees. Power grids remain fractured, clean water is scarce, and radiation continues to poison the land and air. Around the world, eyes watch anxiously as alliances brace for what may come next. Nations prepare, governments mobilize, and humanity holds its breath, waiting, hoping, fearing. Yet amid this darkness, a fragile light remains. The courage of those who survive, the resilience of communities coming together in shelters and safe zones, the tireless work of emergency responders and volunteers. These are the sparks of hope that refuse to be extinguished. We mourn the past, we honor the fallen, but we must also look forward to rebuild, to heal, and to remember the terrible cost of conflict. This crisis has changed the course of history. It demands that we never forget the price paid when humanity turns to war. So as you listen now, wherever you are, hold tight to those you love. Cherish the simple moments, the laughter, the light, for they are the true resistance against the darkness. It has been 6 weeks since the final flash lit up the sky. 6 weeks since the world fell quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. The sirens have stopped. The broadcasts have gone still. No more alerts, no more orders, no more voices telling you what to do. Only the wind. Only the hollow sound of footsteps on crumbling concrete. Survivors are beginning to surface, blinking under the colorless sky, stepping carefully through what remains. Not because it's safe, but because there's nothing else left to hide from. Cities once alive with noise now echo with absence. Vehicles sit frozen in the middle of roads, doors open, lights long dead. Bones, ash, silence. The air still burns in the throat. Rain stings on contact. Trees are blackened, warped. Every shadow carries the weight of what used to be. And the quiet. The quiet is unbearable. There are shelters that haven't heard a voice in days. Communities sealed underground, now without power, without food, without answers. Generators are dying. Water filters are clogged with dust. Children are starting to forget what daylight looked like. And no one is coming. Not anymore. Emergency repeaters loop the same message over and over. Remain in shelter. Await official instructions. But those voices belong to ghosts. This is not recovery. This is not rebuilding. This is what comes after the end. The breathless moment between collapse and whatever comes next. The map of the world no longer matters. Borders are gone. Governments, fragmented, relocated, or erased. Flags hang in tatters, if they still hang at all. In North America, remnants of the federal government have split into 3 competing zones of authority, each claiming legitimacy, none capable of uniting the whole. One controls the Central Plains, broadcasting weak signals from deep military bunkers. Another clings to the coasts, allied with scattered state militias and naval remnants. The third is silent, rumored to have gone underground or rogue. In Europe, unity collapsed days after the second wave of strikes. Paris burns in the distance. Berlin is dark. Warsaw has vanished beneath radioactive snowfall. NATO remains in name only, a fractured shield shattered by too many impacts, too much loss. Russia is a question mark. Satellite feeds show a country frozen in silence. No new launches, no communications, just long-range drones patrolling over wastelands where cities once stood. Some believe Moscow no longer exists. Others say it's sealed off entirely, waiting. China watches from the sidelines, untouched, unspoken, calculating. Their silence is strategic. Their movements, slow and precise. They offer aid to some nations and warnings to others. But their real intentions remain hidden behind perfect smiles and jammed frequencies. Across the globe, a new order begins to take shape, not in capitals or parliaments, but in local strongholds. Warlords, technocrats, survivalists, some offer protection, others demand submission. Cities turn to fortresses, highways become front lines. Resources, not ideology, now define power. International airspace is closed. Oceans are patrolled by silent machines. Satellites flicker in and out, as if watching, hesitating. The world is no longer divided by lines on paper. but by access to light, water, and air. The age of diplomacy has ended. The age of control has begun. They said the worst was over, that after the blasts, the ash, the silence, there would be nothing left to burn. But they were wrong. What followed the shock waves was not stillness, but ignition. Cities still smolder. Rural forests, dried by years of drought and poisoned air, spark like kindling. Chemical fires rage in abandoned industrial zones. Black smoke choking the sky, blotting out what little sunlight remains. Each night glows dim orange, not from warmth, but from the slow combustion of what used to be civilization. And the fires are not all natural. Fuel depots sabotaged, refugee camps attacked. In some regions, militia groups now torch small towns preemptively, cleansing them of dissent or fear. In others, desperate survivors burn down roads, trying to halt the advance of looters, soldiers, or something worse. The land itself is changing. The soil is sour, soaked in ash and radiation. Crops wither before they can bloom. Rivers run black or dry altogether, poisoned upstream by collapsed dams and ruptured pipelines. Cattle lie rotting in open fields. Birds have vanished. Only insects remain in large numbers, resilient, hungry, multiplying. In the Midwest, entire counties burn unchecked. The firefighting infrastructure is gone. In California, a firestorm merges with a radioactive cloud, creating what observers call the red veil. It moves like a creature, slow, thick, suffocating. Where it passes, life doesn't just flee, it ceases. There are whispers now of fire lines being drawn, not by weather, but by human hands. Zones scorched deliberately to isolate populations, to contain panic, or to make way for something else. Those who still write, on scraps of paper, on bunker walls, in fading digital notes, call this new era the season of smoke. Because even after the sirens stop and the missiles fall silent, there is still something left to consume. And fire does not forget how to feed. power is gone. The networks are dark. The cities lie in silence, but not in peace. Millions have become refugees overnight, not crossing borders, but fleeing their own homes, searching for anything that might still resemble safety. They travel by foot, by stolen vehicles, by anything that moves. Their faces worn with exhaustion, eyes hollow from hunger and fear. Families shattered, friends lost to the chaos. In the ruins, survivors form fragile communities, makeshift camps on highways, beneath collapsed bridges, in underground tunnels. They trade food, water, stories, and sometimes violence. Without electricity, radios are the lifelines, crackling static carrying the last vestiges of information. But even that is fading. Medical supplies are scarce. Disease spreads unchecked. Without refrigeration, food rots. Clean water is a precious commodity. The simplest wounds become deadly. And the law? The law is a ghost. Police forces dissolved or overwhelmed. In their place, militias and gangs vie for control, offering protection at a price. Hope is a currency harder to find than water. Yet, amid the desperation, humanity flickers. Neighbors share rations. Strangers shelter the weak. Messages scrawled on walls promise we survive together. And children keep playing, even here, even now. But survival is a game of shadows. Trust is a gamble. Every step outside the shelter could be the last. The dead grid has made refugees not just of geography, but of existence itself. Where do you go when home is gone? Where do you run when the world you knew no longer exists? For those left wandering, the answers remain as uncertain as the dawn. In the midst of chaos, not all have surrendered to darkness. Scattered across the shattered landscape are pockets of resistance, small, determined groups refusing to accept the new world of despair. They are survivors, fighters, organizers, citizens turned guards, defending what little remains. Armed with scavenged weapons and old radios, they coordinate through coded messages. They establish safe zones, temporary sanctuaries where the vulnerable can breathe. These pockets are fragile, threatened by gangs, shortages, and the ever-present shadow of radiation. But they endure. They repair what they can, patching radios, restoring limited power, rerouting water supplies. They share knowledge of radiation zones and safe passages. They salvage medical supplies and distribute food. More than survival, they cling to purpose, to the belief that civilization is not lost, merely broken. Stories spread of daring raids on raider camps, of rescue missions in toxic zones, of children taught to read by candlelight. But the fight is exhausting. Trust is scarce, betrayal common. Every victory costs dearly, and beyond the ruins, new threats emerge. Unseen eyes watch from hidden places. Unknown forces move in the shadows, exploiting the chaos. The flicker of resistance burns bright, but the night is long. Will it be enough? The echoes of destruction still haunt the empty streets and silent ruins. Beneath the shattered surface of a broken nation, the struggle for survival has become a test of will, resilience, and humanity. Government command may persist underground, but for millions above, chaos is the new reality. Communities cling to the fragile hope of connection, but fear and suspicion run just as deep. In shattered neighborhoods, trust is a rare commodity. Survival has sharpened instincts, but numbed empathy. Curfews and martial law attempt to impose order, but the lines between protector and oppressor blur in the absence of clear authority. Healthcare workers battle not only the wounds of radiation and trauma, but also despair. Resources are scarce, supplies rationed. Every life saved feels like a small victory against a tide of loss. Meanwhile, rumors spread faster than relief convoys. Whispers of new threats, biological agents, rogue militias, underground movements, unsettle an already fragile population. Yet amid the shadows, sparks of resistance and solidarity glow. Small pockets of survivors organize food sharing, security patrols, and makeshift schools for children who barely remember a world before. Radio broadcasts like this one become lifelines, a voice in the darkness reminding you, you are not alone. Every message carries a weight beyond words, a promise that humanity endures. The path ahead is uncertain, the wounds are deep, but survival is more than breath. It is a choice. And as long as that choice is made, there remains a flicker of hope. fragile balance between survival and collapse teeters on a knife's edge. Global alliances are fractured but still hold, a brittle web stretched to its breaking point. Satellite feeds are patchy. Intelligence reports are fragmented, contradictory, but one truth remains: the conflict is far from over. Behind the scenes, covert operations escalate. Unseen battles in cyberspace ripple out, threatening to dismantle what little remains of civilian infrastructure. The specter of a new weapon, more devastating, more insidious, haunts whispers on every channel. Leaders scramble to contain the chaos, but some factions see opportunity in the void. Militias rise, fortified enclaves form, and the question hangs heavy in the air: who will claim the remnants of a world undone? Meanwhile, the skies remain heavy with ash and uncertainty. Every transmission, every signal, every whisper becomes a beacon for hope, or a call to surrender. You are part of this story now. Choose to endure. Choose to resist. Choose to be the light in the gathering dark. The dust is finally beginning to settle, but the wounds left behind run deeper than anyone can see. Cities that once thrived now lie in ruin, their silence a haunting reminder of what was lost in an instant. Lives, dreams, and futures extinguished beneath the unforgiving shadow of nuclear fire. Yet, in the midst of this overwhelming darkness, a fragile light flickers. It is the light of resilience, the stubborn spark of humanity refusing to be snuffed out. Survivors emerge from the shelters, battered but unbroken. Strangers become allies. Communities begin to stitch together the frayed edges of a broken world. From the ashes of despair, new hope takes root. The road to recovery will be long and arduous. There will be setbacks, heartbreak, and moments when giving up seems easier. But history has taught us that even after the darkest nights, the dawn always comes. Every act of kindness, every shared meal, every whispered prayer for tomorrow, fuels the fight to reclaim what was lost. It is in these moments of quiet courage that the true strength of humanity shines brightest. Remember those who have fallen, not just as victims of a catastrophic war, but as a call to all who remain, to cherish peace, to build bridges instead of walls, to hold fast to hope even when the world seems beyond saving. This is not the final chapter. It is the first page of a new story, a story where survival is only the beginning. Hold fast to each other. Keep your eyes on the horizon. And above all, never forget that as long as one voice remains, the light will never truly go out. The future is uncertain, but it belongs to those brave enough to face it. And now, the dawn is waiting.